So we were just talking about housing and particularly home ownership in America and some of the issues and barriers to becoming a homeowner, and specifically some of the issues and barriers aligning with race, income level, where you live. And so this really brings us back to home, literally, with the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership. And our mission is to promote responsible and sustainable home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income earners by producing comprehensive training and counseling, as well as promoting the use of special mortgage products and down payment assistance programs. And so the big part of that is educating potential homeowners. Can you talk a little bit about why education matters in this process of buying a house?
Sure. That's a long mission statement. We've talked about shortening it, but it says everything. Homebuyer education is so vital to properly preparing people to buy a house. Buying a house is complicated. There are a lot of moving parts. There's, no matter who you ask, everybody has an opinion. And when someone decides that they're going to buy a house and everybody comes out of the woodwork and starts telling them their experience, things change. Buying a house 5 years ago is different than what it is today, and very different from 15 or 20 years ago. So providing really basic, comprehensive training from A to Z about how to buy a house is so vital for people to get prepared for the process and set the stage.
I can really, that resonates strongly with me, because I remember going into home buying. I was a young nonprofit professional at the time. My husband is an artist. We never really saw ourselves as homeowners, especially at a younger age. And when we realized, maybe we could actually buy a house here in Lowell and we could afford it, it seemed so daunting even to start the process. And it's a huge it's a huge purchase. It's the largest purchase most people will ever make in their lives, that significant amount of money, and to get a loan for that significant amount of money, it's daunting.
It is, and I really empathize with the students, the people going through our classes all the time, watching them go through, and it's so rewarding to be able to give people really solid advice and tell them what to do, what not to do, and all. In the classes, we spend the whole first night 2.5 hours. The whole course is 10 hours long. The first 2.5 hours we explain who everybody is, who are all the professionals, and what's their role, how they're paid, who they work for.
That's so important, getting that transparency of who works for who and who who answers to what, and just understanding how the threads all connect.
And their role, there's a lender, there's an attorney, there's a home inspector, there's an appraiser, there's an insurance person, all lots of people.
Yeah.
And there's a buyer and a seller.
Right.
And so, everybody has a different role. We also talk about the process. What do you do from first you take a class, then you get pre-qualified for a mortgage, you get your financing lined up. And a lot of it's not intuitive, because when people decide to have that aha moment and wake up and say, okay, I'm ready, they go to an open house.
Right.
And they don't know their price range. They don't know what they're qualified to borrow. And so, getting all your financing lined up way in advance is really helpful. And then that brings in the whole budgeting, getting your own personal finances, together.
In
order. We spend a lot of time talking about budgeting. How do you track your expenses? How do you really, assess how you spend your money and put together a realistic household budget?
And coming from renting into homeownership, there's a lot of different and new expenses that people may not anticipate. And I remember from the classes and from working, on the financial counseling side, that, you guys were so thorough of really thinking about, well, you're going to have to buy brooms and vacuum cleaner and hoses and all, ladders, all these things that just don't come to mind. But all of a sudden, you're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep and, everything that is under that roof and on that property, and there's a lot of additional costs to that. There's also a lot of benefit to all of that and the equity that you're building in that, but I think being realistic about what the responsibilities that you're walking into are, that was so wonderful and helpful.
Property taxes, water, sewer bills,
right?
Things
all the costs that as a renter you may not see those coming out in the rent itemized, but are definitely there.
So it's, we help people really figure out their finances and be, prepared. Another big part of it is building credit history. People's credit history is a big determinant about what kind of mortgage they'll qualify for. And so, we pull, in the classes, we pull people's credit for them, and we go over the scores with them and help them figure out, what they need to, if they have issues that need to be addressed, or how to build, or how to create new positive credit history. So budgeting, credit, big issues. And then a lot of it is just the process, so you know who to hire. And I think one of the overwhelming principles that we talk about in the class a lot, the themes, is the importance of building the right team.
Building the right team. I still think about you standing up in front of the class and saying, you have to build your team. And that was a huge part of it, though, was feeling confident that the people who were part of our team of, realtors, lawyers, mortgage brokers, et cetera, that they were trustworthy people, that they were people that we felt comfortable with, that we didn't worry that they were taking us for a ride or just trying to squeeze money out of us, and that these were people who were vetted and invested in supporting a community.
Yeah, so important to have the right team. And because we always use the analogy to a sports team. At the beginning of the season, everybody has to be in place and ready to execute at 100%. It's not so you make an offer, then you go figure out where you're going to get your financing, then you have to stop and figure out where am I going to get my insurance, and you're always playing catch up, and you're not really thinking through these decisions. But putting the whole team together, once your team is together, people eliminate 90% of the problems that they come up with, because they're working with people with good products, good reputations, honest. And in this market, it's particularly with the real estate brokers, you need to have someone that's on top of their game.
There's clearly a lot of benefit and need for education. Can you give us kind of an overview of, how did Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership launch into this role of providing this amazing service? Where did we come from? What's our origin?
Well, I've been with the organization for 27 years, and I joined when it was 6 years old, and I had been working as developers. We built 3 housing complexes and sold all the units off to first-time home buyers.
Wow.
Then in the late 1980s, early 1990s, the real estate market took a big collapse down, similar to what we again went through in 2008. And so at that time, as an organization, we had to figure out how do we address our mission without actually building housing, because it costs more to build it than you could sell it for, which even as a nonprofit, that doesn't make sense. No. So we just started sort of in a vacuum to let's try some education and some type of program. So we started doing these homebuyer training classes at the public library, and after doing that for about a year, we discovered that there were some other people out there doing it. There was a group in Dorchester, Mass Affordable Housing Alliance, that was doing this. So we connected with them and compared notes and came up with best practices, and we do this and how do you do that, and before you know it, it evolves, and there's about 40 different homebuyer counseling agencies in Massachusetts.
Wow.
And we formed a collaborative, and we worked a lot together. I actually chaired the committee that put together the curriculum for all these agencies. It was a year-long effort, and we put together the first big thick curriculum for how do you teach a homebuyer training class and what do you cover in it.
Wow.
And then we formed, we have a selection committee, we have a seal of approval, we have, so it's basically an accreditation process.
Great.
And it involves, following a code of ethics, having a curriculum, and then we get monitored every 2 years and apply for renewals and all. So the whole industry has evolved.
Yeah, a lot of vetting and
a lot of vetting
accountability built in.
Yep, and it's for me it's been great because I've been serving on the selection committee since it was formed. It's re-elected every 2 years, and I have been able to watch the quality and the consistency of homebuyer education throughout Massachusetts just steadily increase. So it's really become a quite an industry.
That's great, and we're leaders in that industry.
We're doing it
right here in Lowell.